Welcome to Eat Your Content. I'm your host, Rich Herrera, and today's episode is part of something truly special. I partnered with podcaston.org for a global event where thousands of podcasters are coming together to spotlight local charities. From March 15th through the 21st, we're using our platforms to make a difference. If you want to explore all the amazing shows and causes being highlighted, visit podcaston.org. For my contribution, I'm bringing back a powerful conversation from episode number 59 with Waste Not, Want Not, a Florida-based nonprofit dedicated to fighting hunger by rescuing surplus food and connecting it with those in need. This interview originally featured then Executive Director Sandra Staut-Killea, who retired at the end of 2024 after over 20 years of service. Her successor, Dr. Kathleen Spears, is now leading the charge, continuing the mission with the same passion and dedication. While leadership may change, the fight against hunger doesn't stop. Waste Not, Want Not continues its incredible work every day, and you can be a part of it. To donate or volunteer, visit wastenotflorida.org. I hope you enjoy this special replay episode, and more importantly, I hope it inspires you to support this incredible cause. Let's make an impact together.
Nationwide, 35 million Americans were food insecure in 2019. But the amount of surplus food from retailers and consumers could feed over 4 times that number.
It's not a lack of food, it's a lack of systems, distribution systems, to get the food in a manageable way.
Welcome to the Eat Your Content podcast. I am your host, Rich Herrera, and Eat Your Content is your home for food and pop culture. I just want to welcome you to our podcast, and you have a lot to choose from, but you chose mine, so thank you for tuning in. Just a reminder to follow me on socials at Rich Herrera and at Eat Your Content on Instagram, TikTok, X, also on YouTube. Just started a YouTube channel at Eat Your Content. So today's show, I'm doing a special episode on food waste. Normally I cover things about foodie TV and foodie TV shows and movies and kind of that fluff stuff. But for today, I wanted to discuss an issue that affects a lot of people. Food waste is a huge issue in the world today and in the U.S. And just a quick statistic, in the U.S., 30 to 40% of food is wasted every year. In 2021 alone, the U.S. wasted 80 million tons of food, most of which ended up in landfills. So in fact, more food reaches landfills than any other single material in everyday trash. Food that is perfectly edible, fresh, simply is just thrown out. So today I'm talking to a person whose mission it is to put a dent in that number and maybe help solve world hunger. So I have Sandra Staut-Killea. You are the Executive Director of Waste Not, Want Not here in Jacksonville, Florida. You are an organization that has been distributing food surplus to nonprofit organizations across Northeast Florida since 1990.
That's right.
Yeah.
35 years next year.
35 years. So tell me a little bit about yourself and kind of how you got involved with Waste Not, Want Not, and how long you've been with the organization and things like that.
Kind of stumbled upon it. I actually found it by mistake one day when I was looking up something else for my daughter. Went to volunteer, and I decided that it made perfect sense. There's all this perfectly good food available, and there are people that are hungry right next door, so why not do that? So I volunteered for a couple of years. I helped them incorporate. They had been around for a long time before I joined them, but we incorporated. We're a 501c3 tax-exempt organization now. And over the years, I volunteered more and more, and at some point kind of became the executive director by default. And I've been doing either volunteering or working at Waste Not for 20 years now.
Wow. Started out as a volunteer.
Yes, one day a week.
One day a week.
Now it's 24/7.
That's 24/7. Right. So tell me about Waste Not, Want Not's overall mission. Like, what is its purpose here in Northeast Florida? What is it that the mission does?
So our tagline is connecting the dots between surplus food and hungry people. Our mission is to prevent the waste of items that can be used to fight hunger and poverty here at home. So basically, we try to intervene wherever there is food that's still healthy and wholesome and is going to be discarded, whether because it's in the wrong color packaging for the holiday is over, whether it's getting close to its sell-by date, an item is cosmetically imperfect but still perfectly good to eat. That's where our volunteers intervene. They try to rescue it from the stores and restaurants. They bring it to our location, and from there we sort it and we share it with other nonprofits. As you mentioned, we don't serve individuals and families at our location, but we serve groups that are food pantries, missions, soup kitchens, after-school programs, weekend backpack programs, group homes. All of those organizations come get what they need from us.
So to be clear and to clarify, you are not a food pantry. You are not open to the general public on certain days to come and fill a bag full of food.
No, we rescue between 4,000 and 7,000 pounds of food a day, and it would be very difficult to share all that food in the same day, which we do if we were serving one family at a time. So also we are located in a place that's not really conducive to having a lot of uninvited traffic.
Right. So I want to run a couple of statistics by you as a nation in food waste and kind of get your thoughts on some of those. So in 2019, nationwide, 35 million Americans were food insecure. But the amount of food surplus from consumers and retailers, restaurants and grocery stores, could feed over 4 times that in amount. So in essence, we're able to tackle the food surplus problem with just the food surplus that we have. Why do we have such a food insecurity problem here in America, reading that statistic?
No one should be hungry in this country. We do overproduce. The problem, of course, is linking the food to the people who need it in the appropriate way. And so that becomes a bit of a challenge. But as you said, almost 30% of the food in grocery stores is just thrown away or rescued, perhaps, in when we can. But I think that there are many reasons why the food isn't reaching the consumers. The store may not be in an area that people can access easily. So if you are in what they call a food desert area, there may be no grocery store there. The grocery stores are for-profit businesses, so they're not interested in being in a neighborhood or an area where there's not enough to support them, and not enough people with enough income to support them. So that's one reason that it's hard to get food if you live in a depressed neighborhood, for example. Some of the other reasons is, as a society, as a culture, we've just come to expect our bananas to all look exactly the same with the same curve and not be brown and not be green. They got to be just yellow, which they only are for a minute. We don't like our carrots to be curvy. We don't like our cucumbers to be crooked. So farmers are growing this food. Stores, retailers don't want to buy it. So we need to change the public's perception and the public's attitudes about what food should look like. What food is still good, even if it looks a little different than we're used to. So that's a big problem. We've also become accustomed to always having the shelves full. Right. We saw that during COVID. People really got upset when the shelves weren't full because we're used to having full shelves. Well, if the shelves are full, that means we're constantly moving stuff in and moving stuff out. And if we've put the best buy date on it, then that's kind of an inventory control. We're moving out the stuff that's oldest but still not old to put even newer stuff on the shelves, and so it's a continual cycle.
Right. Speaking of COVID, this wasn't in my notes, but I'm kind of interested that you brought that up. How difficult was it for Waste Not Want Not during the pandemic? That just recently kind of sort of ended. But like the times when everybody was on lockdown, nobody could go anywhere, and a lot of people lost jobs, and there was a lot more food insecurity during that time than even probably today. How much different did Waste Not Want Not have to shift during that time frame?
It was a real challenge. We are proud to say we stayed open every day, as we always do. We were open every day of the year, and we were able to do that even in 2020 and 2021. It was a challenge because a lot of our volunteers are seniors, so some of them did feel that they needed to take some time off, but other volunteers stepped up to do extra shifts. It was a challenge because when in the state of Florida, restaurants had to go to takeout only, we started getting calls from restaurants that had just filled their pantries and their refrigerators and freezers and weren't going to be able to use that for their takeout menu. It took me by surprise, the first couple of restaurants, so many lemons. Well, it's for the iced tea, the wedges for the drinks, but I couldn't figure out why every restaurant was giving me so many lemons. But that was one of the things that we discovered. The Clay County school system had put all of their produce and their little boxes of milk in, and then they closed a week earlier than they expected. They were going to be open one more week before spring break, and they closed that week. So we had to help them find homes for all those thousands and thousands of cartons of milk. But the challenge was a lot of our charities that we give to were also closing down because they're run by volunteers. So it was a lot of more interesting logistics than usual. But we were able to help a lot of people that we don't usually help. And the demand just soared at the food pantries and the Meals on Wheels and the meal deliveries. So we were glad to be able to do that.
So it was good that you were able to survive. People were still able to get
Yes.
food, a lot more. And so you got an influx of food, and then you were able to at least get that out.
Find a way to get it out.
Find a way to get it out. So that's
The
good.
first couple of weeks were really interesting.
I'm sure. I'm sure your brain was racked. Like, oh my gosh, what are we gonna do? How am I gonna get volunteers in here for one?
Yes.
Just logistically thinking about that, and how do I make sure they're 6 feet apart? And so it's good that, because a lot of nonprofits and a lot of businesses went by the wayside during 2020 and hadn't been able to recover. So it's good that you're such a vital link in this chain of being able to distribute food surplus that you were able to stay up and open and around.
Essential services, right? Well, we're an essential service, so we stayed open.
Yeah, that's good. So let's kind of narrow the focus down to kind of the Northeast Florida. Now you're located here in Orange Park, but you serve a pretty decent amount of area here. So kind of run down the list of the counties that you serve.
So we serve 14 counties. We serve obviously Clay and Duval, but also Palatka, St. John's, Marion, Alachua, Levy, Bradford, Baker. I can't remember all of them, but so it does go pretty far. It doesn't just stay in Clay County. That's one misperception that I'm glad we can dispel, is it really does serve. We have one group that comes from Gainesville every Saturday to get food from us. So they do come from far. And our location here is ideal because we are in a densely populated area. So there are lots of stores and lots of restaurants to rescue from. And in addition to that, we are on the crossroads of 95 and I-10. So a lot of the big distributors have their warehouses and their distribution centers here. So we do rescue large quantities of food from some big distributors, Pepperidge Farm and Bimbo, which owns Thomas, Arnold's, Entenmann's, Ballpark, Sara Lee. So we're able to do that. Whereas if we were located, farther south in the county or way up in the north of Duval, it would be more difficult, I think, to actually source as much food as we're able to do.
Yeah. So some of us, me included, we're kind of far removed from those experiencing food insecurity, but you're in the trenches, you're dealing with it every day. What's the food insecurity like in this area of the counties that you serve, Jacksonville and all that? What are you seeing statistics wise? What are you seeing in terms of numbers and people? Like, what's the food insecurity landscape here in this area?
The studies on that it's hard for them to keep up, day to day. So the last studies shows that 1 in 6 North Florida residents is food insecure. And of course, food insecurity just means not enough food on a regular basis to lead a healthy life.
Right.
Okay. So, and 1 in 6 is kind of a fancy way of hiding the actual numbers. So in Clay County, 1 in 6 is, I think, 220,000 people, or maybe I can't remember the exact number, but I think it's funny when we say 1 in 6, it doesn't really emphasize that these are people. That These are a lot of people that are hungry on a regular basis. So, so there's that. The demand for food has not really gone down, even though the pandemic has kind of waxed and waned. But with inflation, food, of course, is one of the things where it has been hit the hardest by inflation. Mm-hmm. And it seems that the demand continues to go up. The groups that are coming to us are telling us they're seeing more. And since January of this year, we've had, I think, 12 new groups apply to get food from us. So, there's a lot of
so a lot
out there.
A lot of people. So, like you're saying, Clay County alone, you're looking at 200,000 people. That's not an insignificant amount of people. So I can imagine, like, densely populated like Jacksonville has almost 1 million people. It's got to be multiplied, right? So
that's a lot
of people. So. So you're talking about how much food you rescued. So if you had to ballpark it in the last, like, say in 2023, how many pounds of food?
Just under 2 million. Wow. The previous year we did just over 2 million. This year it was just under 2 million. We were getting drinks for a long time, and drinks are very heavy, and that source has dried up, no pun intended. So our numbers are less. But in terms of food alone, if we take the drinks out of that, we rescued 1% more than we did in 2022 in terms of food, excluding drinks. Right. So although the total pounds went down, we're still pretty excited that we provided more food, which is healthier than sodas anyway.
Yeah, right. So with your group, you only have, when we talk about nonprofits, a lot of people are kind of skeptical, like, oh, well, how many of them are paid? How much of my dollars goes to paid administrative people? You really only have 2 paid people, yourself and
Yeah.
one other person.
That's right.
And everything else is run by volunteers.
That's correct.
Right?
We have the two, and we probably will be expanding next year to have maybe 3 or 4 total, because we continue to grow. But we are proud that it's volunteer driven.
Yeah.
It's mission based and volunteer driven. So that's something that Waste Not always has been, and I hope it always will be, because it is very cost efficient, and people are skeptical. But if I could put in a plug, if we want our nonprofits to be well run, we want people who are qualified,
Sure.
and those people should get paid a reasonable amount of money to
Sure.
run a business, whether it's a for-profit or a not-for-profit. So,
Right. Right. I definitely understand that, but
there are some that are ridiculous.
No,
But
yeah,
there's some that should get paid more.
you know, and you hear some, I don't know which ones,
Yeah.
but for every dollar, like 80 cents goes to administrative pay.
Yeah.
So that's ridiculous. I don't know. I'm just
But
making that up.
we're
But
proud that every dollar we spent last year, the cash dollar we spent last year, we were able to provide 15 pounds of food to someone. And we are in the fortunate situation that 98% of every dollar that we spend goes directly towards program.
Yeah.
So we I like our percentages, but I'm not sure that's where we need to focus the most when we're deciding whether an organization is worthy of our support.
sure.
But
Sure.
works for us.
Yeah. Right. So walk me through the process from kind of soup to nuts, from where you get the food from to getting it to its end user. What all is involved in that logistical chain?
That's the right word for it. It's all logistics. We convince stores or restaurants to donate to us rather than dumping. We convince them because we assure them that they're protected by the Good Samaritan law, which is a federal law, also the state statutes of Florida. They get a tax deduction and they get lower dumping fees. So even if they don't feel like it's the right thing to do, it's certainly the right economic thing to do because it saves them money. So they donate, they agree to donate to us, and we get them on a schedule. And our volunteers, typically using their own vehicles, will go to that store and rescue whatever's available. So 154 times a week right now, one of my volunteers or two are at the right place at the right time to rescue food. So 154 times a week, volunteers bringing food into our building. We're located in the town of Orange Park. Our daily drivers who use their own vehicles go within about a 15-mile radius of that to rescue food. We also have a box truck that we use for the bigger rescues. I mentioned that we get food from Bimbo and Pepperidge Farm and Pepsi and Dr. Pepper. We do that in our box truck, but it's driven by a volunteer as well, or several different volunteers go different days. So all that food is at our building by 10 o'clock every day of the year. Usually, sometimes it's a little earlier, sometimes it's a little later, as we saw today, but typically by 10 o'clock. And that's between 4,000 and 7,000 pounds on average each day. And then our volunteers that work in the building sort that food so that we are giving each recipient group what's useful to their end recipient, to their clientele. So if it's a mission, we might be able to give them the larger hams and whole turkeys and big amounts of produce that are all the same. If it's a group that's serving homeless people, we're going to give them the small pieces of cake that are already cut and in the little clamshell, the small individual salads and wraps from Trader Joe's, so that they can hand them to these people directly without having to make the peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And if it's regular size stuff, we'll give that to the food pantries. So we've got, as I said, missions, soup kitchens, food pantries, group homes. And so based on what the group is doing, are they feeding? Are they distributing groceries? How often? Do they have refrigeration? Do they have freezers? We have, with experience, have learned what will be useful to them, and that's what we share with them. So by noon every day, our incoming shelves are empty again, and it's out into the hands of about 2,200 people a day eat food that Waste Not has touched. So that's kind of neat thing to think about. And our groups distribute as they see fit. So if it's a group home, obviously it goes into the kitchen. If it's a food pantry, they're open when they deem is appropriate. I was mentioning to you earlier, a lot of our schools now have food pantries in the school. Sadly, a lot of the parents are working poor, but they're working when the food pantries are typically open, and the teachers have realized this and have kind of banded together to get a food pantry in the school so that the parents can pick up groceries when they pick up their kids.
Right.
So,
Right.
Sad, but it's good that they're doing it.
Yeah. So a lot involved there, and it does kind of depend a lot on these grocery stores and restaurants. being able to do this with you easily and cost effectively. And I toured your storage area and your warehouse, and I saw a lot of Publix stuff. So no free ads, but I like Publix. So there you go. So Publix seems to be one of your bigger and longer partners, I would say.
Publix was the first store that back in 1990 was the first store that we approached. Not me, but
right.
Someone approached on Waste Not's behalf, and so they are. And of course, there's lots of Publix stores here. But to be fair, while there are 15 Publix stores that donate to us, Bimbo donates large quantities as well, even though we're only there 3 times a week. And Trader Joe's donates just absolutely wonderful stuff. We're there 7 days a week, and we get produce and meat and cheese and dairy and eggs and just everything that you see in their store, we get donated from there. So, but yes, the longest running donor is definitely Publix.
Yeah.
So.
One thing I noticed too, when we talked earlier, I said this is not a food pantry. So I want to make sure that people understand.
Yes, please
don't show up with your 18-year-old canned goods from World War II or whatever. What I saw in your warehouse though, that's different than I've seen from food pantries, for instance. A lot of fresh produce. I was helping a lady load up a box in her car, a couple of boxes in her car. There was tomatoes, oranges, fresh basil. These are things that nutritious foods. We're not talking about you're just giving away boxes of mac and cheese or canned salt, a bunch of sodium filled cans of food. These are things that people can actually eat healthily and be able to take advantage of and cook their own food and not just be subjugated to whatever microwave meals that somebody was nice enough to give them, right? So how important is it that people are able to get access to fresh produce, fresh food, fresh bread even, not just the Pepperidge Farm bread, but actually, baked, that day or the day before bread. How important is that for you as Waste Not to have that available for people?
We are so excited when we can find more donors that have the healthier foods. Local Fare, which is a local company that does produce boxes. People can buy a weekly subscription to get fresh produce. And at the end of every week, we get all the produce that's left from them, because you can pick and choose what goes into your box. Mm-hmm. So you may alternate something. And we were very happy to get them as a donor because it's all produce. A couple loaves of artisan bread, but all produce, several hundred pounds a week from them. So that's wonderful. And that's why I also mentioned Trader Joe's, because that's one of our biggest sources of protein, fresh protein, the dairy, the meat, and the fish as well, frozen fish. So those are the healthiest foods, and they're the most expensive foods.
Right.
So if there's anything we can do to move the needle towards more of that, we always try. And so we have another restaurant that we're hoping to start working with that has between 100 and 150 pounds of chicken every week that they would like to donate. So we're going to try and get them, even though they're a little bit farther away, because it's meat and so valuable to our recipients. We're going to try and work that one out next. So
So speaking of which, in terms of, you said you're working with a local restaurant. Maybe there's a restaurant that's listening, or another grocery, maybe a smaller grocery chain or something, or somebody else that wants to help and be a donor. Mm-hmm. How would one get in contact with Waste Not, Want Not to possibly become a donor?
Okay. So just to be clear, we try to do a 15-mile radius. So if you're, at the far ends of the earth, we're probably not going to be able to help you. Right. We do get calls from Tampa and places like that. And we're like, no, that's a little bit far. We cannot rescue legally anything that has been served. So if it's on a self-serve buffet or it's been on someone's plate, can't do that. Right. And it has to have been prepared by a caterer or other licensed food prep, organization. But anyone wanting to reach us to inquire more, or to let us know what they have, they can go to our website, which is Waste Not Florida, spell out Florida, wastenotflorida.org. And there's a contact us button there, and they can certainly get to us that way. There's also a volunteer button there if anyone's a volunteer, and there's of course the great big donate button as well if anyone has cash to spare.
So I was going to ask you about that. So if somebody wanted to volunteer, they can go to your website, fill out a form, and you'd be in touch with them. One thing I do want to kind of clear up in terms of donations, like if somebody can't necessarily volunteer time, but they want to volunteer, money or things, probably best to give you cash, right? Give you money versus rolling up in a pickup truck full of their pantry food.
There's a couple things there. Yes. Money is more helpful to food rescues and even to food pantries. If, as I said, for every dollar we spent last year, we were able to provide 15 pounds of food. Some of it was lobster tails from Red Lobster. Some of it was prosciutto from Trader Joe's. If you spend $1 and buy a can of soup, we've got one meal for that dollar. Whereas if we spend $1, we can stretch it a lot farther through we say magnified by the efforts of our volunteers, it will go a lot farther. Even if you're donating to a food pantry, money is probably more useful because they can buy a case of what they need. If they need peanut butter, they can buy a case of peanut butter. If you're trying to guess what they might need, you may be buying mac and cheese, and they may already have plenty of mac and cheese today. So I think that if you trust a nonprofit, you should trust them with $1 rather than the can of soup. That's my own personal opinion, but it is more cost efficient to do it that way. The food pantries that have food drives, what they're hoping for is that you will buy new food at the store, or that you will get your BOGO and give them the other half of your BOGO. They're not hoping for you to go into your pantry and find old food.
Right.
That's very difficult for them because A, again, it may not be what they need today, but B, they have to look at each one of those and try and figure out where the use by, best by, sell by date is on this jar, and then on this jar it's on the bottom, and on that box it's on the top, and on this one you can't read it. And that's just very time consuming and not a very efficient use of their volunteers' time. So I'm not a big fan of food drives in general, as you can tell.
Yeah.
It's not cost efficient, it's not time efficient. And now, if you have food, if you've done a food drive with your scout troop, your kids' scout troop, and you don't know where to share it, certainly the food pantries are happy to get it, and we would be delighted to have it and share it. But cleaning out your pantry is not really useful. If you don't want to eat it and you wouldn't serve it to your parents or your children, then we won't share it, and most food pantries won't either.
Right. So. Well-intentioned, but probably not the right avenue to go. I was watching a documentary, like after every natural disaster, people have like clothing drives or whatever, and you're donating an old fur coat to somebody that is not going to be able to use it.
Tropical temperatures.
Yeah, in tropical temperatures. Like you have a hurricane down here in Florida and somebody from Michigan is donating their fur coat. I'm not going to be able to use that. So donating time and money is really the two best things a person can do. But we were talking.
For Waste Not, there's one other thing.
Yeah, we were talking earlier, and you're like brown paper sacks.
Yes.
We need brown paper sacks to be able to fill and give to these folks. And I thought, what an odd thing to think about that I didn't. Yes. That wouldn't cross my mind. Time and treasure, sure. Brown paper bags, not so much. Are there any kind of other things that Waste Not, Want Not can use that people might not think about, but you have to think about like every day?
So the brown paper bags is really, really important to us. We do package it, all the food that we get in these bags, and we give it to the charities. So we don't usually get the bags back because I guess they use them to give to their end recipients. We use over 500 paper bags a day. And if we don't get enough donated, we have to buy them. So I'm buying over about 2,000 bags a month.
Wow.
And each 500 bags is $98. So, that adds up. That's one of the things that we do have to spend money on. But so brown paper bags, and that's something that's easy and kids can get involved. They can have, at schools, they can do paper bag drives, and the classrooms can compete against each other, see who brings in the most bags. So that one's real helpful. The other thing that we do purchase, we do package some of our breads. The breads that are in the perforated packaging go stale faster. So we put those in large black bags, plastic bags, but they have to be unscented. And that's actually hard to find right now.
Yeah.
All the garbage, you call them garbage bags, if you will, but we call them black bags because it's not garbage that's in them. But most of them are scented. The scents, of course, are chemicals, and the perforated bags are perforated. So the chemicals and the taste and the smell get on the bread. So we can't use those. So we do have an Amazon wish list, and on there are our unscented black, the right size garbage bags that we need to package our long sticks of French bread.
So just search for Waste Not, Want Not in Amazon, and it'll come up that way?
I have to figure that out. But I did put up a wish list recently, and somebody did find it and sent us some of the black bags. So yes, if you look for Waste Not, you should be able to find our wish list there. There's brown paper bags, there's the black plastic bags, and a few other odds and ends that we do use. But the paper bags, you can ask for paper when you shop if you're not using reusable, and we're there from 9 to noon for sure. Every Monday through Saturday, you can drop them off and you'll see the happy dance when you do.
So interesting. Paper bags, I never would have thought.
Makes us so happy.
I know. It's so funny. So what else about Waste Not Want Not do you want people to know about that maybe we didn't cover or talk about that would be helpful to viewers and listeners?
Okay, so we talked about how we get the food in. We talked about how we share the food.
Yep.
We talked about some of our needs. Obviously, always need more volunteers, because if we're doing 135 rescues a week, plus the people working in the building, inevitably somebody wants to go visit grandchildren or has a doctor's appointment. So we need substitutes. Even if you can't commit to a weekly schedule, you can be on call for us when we need a substitute. And
Yep.
Our other employee is our volunteer director / dispatcher, and her job is an amazingly difficult job, and she does an absolutely amazing job on it. She keeps everything running, which is
The cat herder
of
the
cat
group,
herder.
right?
And and she just really is very much a people person. Our volunteers love her, and she gets all those shifts covered somehow, some miracle. And there's some months where there's over 200 subs needed in a month because it's summer vacation and everyone goes away. But so we always need more volunteers. Long story short, and what else? The misperceptions that we only serve clay and Duval. We talked about that already.
Yeah.
The misperceptions that we're a food pantry. We're not a food pantry.
Right.
We're kind of at the whim of the food donors. We have what we have. We're not in the storage business. Whatever we get in, we
It's gotta
share.
go
It's
out.
got to go out. It's
Right.
all perishable, semi-perishable. So we're not sitting on things. We're trying to share those as quickly as we can. So
One thing I forgot to cover, if you're a nonprofit or a ministry that is looking to take advantage of the resources of
Yes.
Waste Not Want Not, they could also go to your website,
Yes.
wastenotflorida.com
wastenotflorida.org.
or .org,
Yep.
sorry, wastenotflorida.org. Fill out the same contact information. You kind of go
Yes.
through a vetting process of what you need or what they need.
What they
and-
need. Yes,
and
on
all
there,
that.
there's actually, for the volunteers, there's a button and there's a form to fill out. For recipient groups, there's a button also, and there's a survey. Basically, what do you do? How often do you do it? Do you have refrigeration? Do you have freezers? Are you serving meals? Are you distributing groceries? All those questions, and then we'll get back in touch with you and see how we can help.
Okay.
So,
One other interesting fact that this came to mind, we were talking earlier, unfortunately, not all the food that you bring in goes out. Sometimes the bread ends up getting stale or moldy, but even then you have a plan for that food. Tell me a little bit about that. We talked about it earlier, but kind of tell me a little bit about what happens when that food surplus, unfortunately, spoils.
Yeah. So if anything comes in that's not fit for human consumption, basically the bag is ripped open, it has gotten moldy before we get it, or heaven forbid, gets moldy when it's with us, but that rarely happens because we're moving it quickly once we get it. But for whatever reason, it's not fit for human consumption. We segregate that type of item from our regular trash, and we bag that up separately. We call it hog bread. We put it in separate garbage cans that are labeled hog bread, and we have individuals that can come take that for their animals. And we have one group in particular, it's CJ Acres, and it's a farm animal rescue shelter, I guess. And he comes regularly to get the hog bread out of our, it's in bags, so he can just lift the bag out and take it with him, and that helps him feed his donkeys and cows and whatever else he has there.
That is so funny.
We're trying not to waste. That's our,
Waste Not Want Not. It's right there in the name.
Right
but when you told me that, I was like, truly nothing goes to waste.
We
and
try
that's
not to.
great.
Yeah.
So, local farmers can also go on your website and contact you and say, look, I didn't even know this was around. I'm spending so much money on feed. This might save me a few bucks, right? So excellent. So besides the website, wastenotflorida.org, where else can people find you?
We are on Facebook.
Okay.
It's Waste Not Florida on Facebook. We don't do many of the other social channels. We do have an Instagram, but we don't have the ability. I don't have the ability to really manage all the social channels. So if somebody's really interested in what we do, but is not available to pick up food in the morning, because most of our rescues are in the morning, but they would like to help us with our social media, that would be lovely. Our marketing skills are not the best. We have been around for 34 years. Next year, as you said, is our 35th anniversary. The one thing, we do what we do very well, but we don't market well. So if there's anybody out there that just thinks this is really neat, but has that skill set, we could certainly, I'd love to hear from them. Go onto our website, contact us.
Yep.
I'm your guy,
Yep.
your gal.
So I'm very happy to have done this because, I'm to give exposure to you, like you're saying, we talked earlier about, we don't market real well.
Yep.
We're too busy feeding people. We don't have a lot of time to do TikTok dances over in the corner. So if you're a social media manager out there listening or watching, and you want to volunteer some time, give Waste Not Want Not a call, and they would be happy to turn over the social media channels to you guys and see what you can do. Because you guys have been around for a long time. The people in this area know who you are. People that are involved in this type of thing know who you are, but people that are just in the general public don't know anything about you, don't even know that this exists. They know Salvation Army, they know Goodwill's out there that feeds people, but how do they get the food? They're not going out there to Publix and all that. They're coming to people like you. And I think with the food surplus issue, I was watching a documentary. That's the biggest problem with the food surplus, is just that the groups of like yours that are that linchpin that are in the middle of that logistical chain of food surplus and people that need it. There's no good way to connect them, and it's Waste Not Want Not that links that together. So you provide a valuable service that I think deserves recognition. So what's your name?
My name is Dr. Lori Sarver.
Okay, and who do you represent? Who are you picking food up for?
LAS Marketplace Ministry. We serve the city of Green Cove Springs.
Okay, and do you come here like every week, pick up food?
We come weekly to pick up food. We serve 4 different apartment complexes, so each week we go into a different apartment complex.
Okay, so you're serving the food insecurity in those apartment complexes?
Yes.
Okay. How long have you been working with Waste Not Want Not?
I want to say maybe 3 years, maybe 4.
Okay. And how much harder would your ministry or service would be without Waste Not?
It would be hard, because they give us the supplement to be able to feed those people, because we feed the underserved communities.
Okay.
And those are usually our elderly population, our single moms, our single parents that have kids. And so it would be hard if we did not have Waste Not Want Not being a part of our ministry.
What would it be the alternative if you didn't have this ability to get this free food from Waste Not Want Not?
It would be spending more money out of our pockets because what we do now, we supplement with meat and canned goods. Okay. And so we would have to now add on the other things that we're getting from Waste Not Want Not.
The bread, I see a lot of bread, some
pastries,
some nice little snacks for everybody.
Yes.
So you'd end up having to spend more money for this in addition to the money that you're already spending.
Yes.
So you'd end up serving less people in essence.
Yes.
Who do you guys represent, and how has Waste Not Want Not helped you in your mission?
Sure. We represent what's called the Soup Kitchen, and we provide seniors, and really it's a free lunch for anybody on Saturdays at the Orange Park Senior Center.
Okay.
But they also do it at the Middleburg, Green Cove, and then through that organization, a bunch of different churches support that. And our church, High Point Community Church, we are supporting that. This is our week to do it, and they have been, Waste Not Want Not kind of gives us all the stuff we need.
Yeah.
The bread, everything else, and we just provide some soup and the lunch meat. And then we make sandwiches every Saturday, no matter what group it is. So they've been able to help feed seniors. And it's been nice that we're back in the senior center, so they can sit around and actually socialize.
Yeah.
And also provide those in need. Also, we have some homeless population that are in the area, and they come by and they get some sandwiches and other food stuff.
Okay.
So it's been great.
That's awesome. How much more difficult would this be for you if not for Waste Not Want Not? Would you end up having to buy food?
We would have to buy all of this and take all that time, so it cuts, costs down, but also time.
Okay.
So the service they provide is invaluable, really.
And how long have you been working with Waste Not Want Not?
I've been involved with this just about 6 years, a little over 6 years, 6.5 years.
Wow. So, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for showing me around. I spent a lot longer than I had anticipated. But I had a lot of fun learning about the place. I helped some people load some trucks. I thought, well, might as well make myself useful while I'm here.
You don't get to stand around. If you're moving.
You got time to lean. You got time to clean, as they say. So I put the camera down and I helped load some trucks and got to talk to some people that you're helping.
Yeah.
And all of them had kind of the same refrain: is if Waste Not, Want Not wasn't here to help us, I would not be able to help as many people, because now I'd be spending money that we don't have as a nonprofit on food, and I wouldn't be. I would help the same people less, not even helping less people. I'd be helping less people. I'd be helping the same people less. And if it weren't for Waste Not, it wouldn't happen. I saw a person driving off in a van full of food, like, the big 15 passenger van. And I asked him, I was like, so I said, that was a pretty big load. He goes, this is a small load. He said, normally I bring a truck. But somebody had the truck today, so I had the van. It's normally filled from floor to ceiling. And so, well, how much harder would it be? It's like, it'd be impossible for us to do what we do without Waste Not, Want Not. So just know that you are filling a very necessary void, or a very big void in this area. So Sandra, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
It was fun. It's always fun to show off what we do. And, our volunteers do every day. So, and it'd be great if more people learned about us, because as the middleman, nobody really knows where that food came from. The people at that charity that are getting the food for that charity have no idea that we are in the background there. So.
Right. So follow Waste Not, Want Not on their one Facebook page. But hopefully, again, any social media managers out there, we can change that.
One woman stopped by today, and she had food that had been delivered by Walmart that was not intended for her, and she didn't know what to do with it. So she Googled us and found us and was able to bring that food to us, so that food was put to good use today as well.
There you go. So Waste Not, Want Not Florida
Waste Not Florida.
Oh, sorry. WasteNotFlorida.org. And you can Google Waste Not, Want Not Florida, and it'll pop right up too. So make sure you check them out on Facebook, and also don't forget to follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok at Rich Rare at Eat Your Content, and make sure to follow the podcast player of your choice to make sure you're notified of when things drop. So again, thank you for your time, and Sandra, thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Rich.
Thanks for listening to Eat Your Content. If you like what you hear, please consider supporting the podcast through my merch store on TeePublic. Get great quality items like t-shirts, hats, mugs, and more, all sporting the vibrant Eat Your Content logo. Go to teepublic.com/user/eatyourcontent for more great items, and thanks for your support.